Okay, good afternoon. I'm Julia Gelfand from the University of California at Irvine, and I'm here to introduce this session, which is about those of us committed to the Charleston Conference, even after we have retired or plan to retire. So, the questions are, why do we still affiliate, make the trip to Charleston, stay eager to participate? Let me introduce our panel that is composed of 3 librarians and a former publisher. Eleanor Cook, on my far right, is a librarian with a long tenure of different assignments in libraries in Virginia and North Carolina. And Scott Plutchak, to her left, is a former medical library director and active contributor to professional literature and meetings, and has served as a mentor to many of us. And Anthony Watkinson, to my immediate right, is a serial STM publisher, still engaged, as he will share. And with due diligence, I'm not yet retired and active, but closing in on it, and honestly a bit concerned about it. So that's this session. We think of the obvious reasons as they relate particularly to the Charleston Conference, but we may also extend our ideas to other professional options we have and things that we have chosen. Why do we maintain professional friendships and relationships that are still valued and make trips to rekindle those? Networking, because it was ingrained in us, or are there other reasons? How do we stay in the loop? And potential connections for future consulting gigs or the next chapter in a work-related environment. And we just love Charleston and everything it offers. So, more broadly, how long and how intensely do we stay engaged with the following activities, such as maintaining memberships in scholarly societies, retaining subscriptions to the professional literature, and attending other conferences, workshops, and related activities. So this is our substitute salon-type program, which will begin with a couple of questions, and then we want to know what you think of your prospects in retirement. Out of curiosity, how many people in the room are currently formally retired? And you're all here, thank you. That sort of solidifies our thinking on this. So the first question I'm going to pose to the panel is, first of all, do you consider yourself retired? And once formally retired, did you stay involved right away or come back to professional and career activities at a later time? And how did you determine what those priorities are?
Oh, I'm Anthony Watkinson. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'll move it forward. I retired in 1998, I think, technically, because I finished, my job was finished, like John Levin knew us, by our company, our whole main company, sold us to Walter Slower. It was very annoying. And I thought I was too old to get another job. It wasn't quite true, but I decided after having nearly got a job with Springer, when they were bought by Bertelsmann, and I lost all the negotiations went to nothing. So I developed a portfolio of jobs, which include working for STM, for working at the University College London, teaching, publishing, and there were a few other jobs. That continued for some time, and gradually things fell away. So now I am retired technically in the sense I take my pensions, but my pensions are not really sufficient to continue my standard of living as I'm used to it. So I'm still in the business. I'm at the moment in between grants. I'm a researcher primarily, and I've got money to go to meetings, but that's not much good if I don't get. There's expenses, so it's not very helpful, really. Okay, so I'm looking for jobs while I'm here.
All right. Anybody who who can make use of Anthony's talents.
Yeah.
He's on the market. I sort of eased into retirement. The short circuit in my spinal cord occurred in 2012. So I continued working actually for another 5 years, but gradually got to the point where it was the day-to-day was just too much. So I was able to retire on disability, which has prevented me from having to do the kind of scrambling that poor Anthony is doing. But when I retired, I still had some committee involvements. I had some paper projects that I was working on. So I actually spent about 4 years slowly unwinding all of these other activities. So it's been about 2 years now that I consider myself to really be completely, blissfully retired. So in terms of the appeal of Charleston, it's the people. I think it's relationships built up over a quarter of a century. I'm still interested in the issues, but I'm not invested in them in the same way. I don't feel compelled to read The Scholarly Kitchen every day. I do not understand how a transformative agreement is supposed to work, and I don't care.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
And then, of course, it's Charleston, and it's the food, and it's the restaurants, and why not come and hang out with all these interesting people for a while?
Yes, I'm with you, Scott. Of the three here at the panel, I'm Eleanor Cook, and I have only been retired since 2021. And I was fortunate in having a tenured position in the UNC system, so I was eligible for something called phased retirement, which for 3 years you get to work part-time and they still pay you. It's just a very nice arrangement, and I know that not every state does it, or every institution, but I was fortunate to have that. And so my job responsibilities changed the last 2 years. They sent me over to the music library to be the acting head while they were trying to recruit for somebody. And that was a whole new thing for me, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Since I've been actually retired, I've moved back to the mountain town of Boone, North Carolina, where I'd worked before, and I'm trying to spend most of my time focused on non-library activities, but I try to use my skills, to apply them to other things. For example, I volunteer at a thrift store that is associated with our local Humane Society. So I, organize things and sort things like a librarian might do. And I help my friends who have had loved ones die. I help them clean out their homes, and I sure would like someone to do that for me. Help me with that, but it's harder when it's your own stuff. But I also, like Scott, I sort of had a few things when I retired that I was still doing, but I've dropped those off. And while I still maintain my retired status with ALA, Charleston's really the only conference I would consider probably going to again. I'm very, very grateful that they invited me to come back this year. So, what other questions might we have?
so attending conferences such as Charleston as a retiree, do you attend different programs, or do you go to programs at all? Or do you just kind of sit in the lobbies of hotels and meet people at restaurants? Or are you, what distinguishes your attendance now? Some of you mentioned that already, but anything else?
I mean, I have great admiration for all of the work and ingenuity and great ideas that are being presented in the buildings around here. And I wish them all the very best. I have no intention of attending any of them. I went to the the vendor showcase yesterday, just to wander around and to see people and to have conversations with people. One of the things I've been telling people that is so great about being retired is I'm no longer responsible to anybody, and I'm not responsible for anybody. And having that kind of freedom to then be able to talk to people and engage, and I like talking about the ideas with them without having the responsibility to then go back to my institution and sort of wrestle with those real problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're going to sessions, aren't you, Anthony?
Yes, I am. I just given a presentation just now, about an hour ago.
I know. So tell us why
Why
you're
am I-
going because you're seeking to keep up with trends, or
No, a bit. I'm looking for some work, and I make it. But I've got various jobs to do. For example, I've got various jobs to do for the Charleston people. For example, I have to go to committee meetings and so forth, and I have jobs to do for the association.
Speak up.
Anthony.
I go to the Association of Learned Professional ALPS, Association of Learned Professional Society Publishers, and I'm on their training committee, and two of us are here, and we spread around information about their courses. That's the sort of thing. They take up time, actually, oddly enough, and I've started to go to various sessions this morning, and I only got to any as I went to, which was the main one, was the plenary, and I got there about 10 minutes in, so I missed hearing Katina being praised. I'd love to have seen that. But I've found that standing outside these rooms, people approach me, because the social thing is so great. It's so lovely to see people like Eleanor and Scott Plutchak. And it's lovely to see them. And so people come up to me and they say, how nice to see you. In some cases, I don't recognize them, but I know they're people I know.
Right. So nice to see you again is the line.
Yes, of course.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Eleanor?
I went to the opening session this morning because I knew that I would hear the top shelf concepts that this conference has always been about. And not surprisingly, the topic of artificial intelligence was front and center with much of the conversation there. I don't anticipate that I personally will have much direct impact on that, but it's fascinating to me. You know, the problems and the issues that I spent my career dealing with, they're still there. And but one thing I do want to make a mention of, I read this article about a year ago, and for the life of me, I have yet to be able to find it again. However, I think you can find articles like this in many different journals. I think I read it either in the Chronicle of Higher Education, Medium, or maybe Harvard Business Review. I can't remember, but it was about the fact that when you're in academia and you retire, you become, you suddenly realize, who are you? Because when you're in the job, you have to fit certain mold. Now, I realize that's probably true in the corporate world too, but academia has its own special problems. And when I read that article, it really hit me that that was something that I was going to relish in retirement, was reconnecting with myself. Who am I really? And it's true. I have really been able to do that in ways that I'd never thought I would do. So I think that's a real benefit of retirement, if you have the opportunity to, examine your life and think about, where I am now and what I want to do. So.
Yeah, and it can be a real challenge, I think, for a lot of people. I was working in a health sciences center, having colleagues who are physicians and nurses and have so much of their life invested in their professional practice.
Yeah.
I remember at my retirement party, I was talking with the dean of public health, who's a good friend, and he said, "So you figured out how you can actually let it go." And he was really mystified because he was one of those people who I don't think would have been able to let it go. Now, I was fortunate in that I always had other interests. And so as much as I loved my connections with the profession and with the people, it wasn't everything for me. So I was able to kind of shift and explore, as you say, some of those other issues. I'll mention, because it's a direct connection with Charleston, writing has always been important to me, and I've always written on professional issues as well as other things. And so when I officially retired, I wanted to have some pressure to keep writing, and I thought, I've done a couple of things for Against the Grain, and maybe Katina would let me do like a regular column for Against the Grain. And I thought that would be good for me. It would give me a deadline. I thought, well, I don't want to impose, I don't want to assume anything. So I spent a couple of months really thinking about how I could kind of make this pitch very delicately, no pressure. And I came to the Charleston conference that year, and Katina was sitting outside the vendor showcase, and I went up and said hello, and she had just retired, and I said, "How's retirement going?" And she said, "How's retirement going? Would you like to do a column for Against the Grain?"
Yeah, that's right.
And I said, "Oh, what an idea! Let me consider that." But I've invested a lot of time in that, and it becomes, as you say, a way of exploring parts of yourself that you didn't necessarily have an opportunity to while you were working.
Mm-hmm. So on a related note, is there any other things that you think retirees might still have to offer, meetings and auxiliary outputs, such as, you said, publications like the Charleston Hub, Against the Grain, and the like? Anything else that comes to mind in terms of value, that experience that we all have gives back?
Well, one thing that I had attempted to get started before I retired, and the pandemic sort of popped the balloon on it, was we were going to do a documentary about the Charleston Conference. And I mean, we had a lot of groundwork laid for that. We had a memorandum of understanding with somebody who was actually going to do the filming. We had people lined up to interview. We were going to do focus groups. We had all this stuff lined up, and then it just went. So we're talking now about how to get back to that. And so if anybody knows anybody that's good at that sort of thing, I mean, I'm not a filmer, so, but we do have a lot of footage. There's archives, there's footage, there are people that are willing to help. We just have to get it back. We have to get the energy back to possibly get that project going again.
I'm related to that. It's Eleanor already knows that. But Katina's spoken for some years about writing her memoirs, and I think some of us, Leah and me particularly, have been trying to get her to pin down her ideas of what she wants to do. Now, is it her whole life? Is it based upon her life, or is it based upon the conference, the life of the conference? And if it's the latter, there's a great deal of work to be done, and this is part of the thing that Eleanor was talking about, the film. And I'll know tomorrow more, because my son has found a potential publisher, somebody from the University of South Carolina, who is the local university press, and she is coming to see Katina tomorrow morning, and I'm going to be in attendance, and so is Leah. So we'll see.
Very good.
So
Good luck. We
so
hope.
there may be all
Fingers crossed.
sorts of needs. There's certainly been needs for people of our sort of age to remember things.
So on a very practical note,
Yeah. So,
what about the idea of a special registration rate
Yeah.
for retirees?
I think
Or
it's
something
necessary.
like some kind of an incentive to attend conferences, to come back, to stay engaged in some way. Does it really matter, or do you think it would make a difference?
I think it would make it. I think it's a marvelous idea and will make a difference. Though I don't pay for anything at the moment.
I've been thinking about this question a lot, and I have somewhat mixed feelings. I mean, from the standpoint of the retirees who want to come back to the conference, yes, some kind of cut rate, making it easier because we don't have institutional support anymore, is great for us. What I wonder is, how do you mobilize and take advantage and make our attendance great for others? You know, I can't come and do a presentation anymore about the interesting things I'm doing in my library because I don't have a library where I'm doing interesting things. So what's the trade-off? What's the payoff?
You have to sing. You have to sing.
Yeah. Damn, I forgot my harmonica. But if we're going to get some kind of incentive to come, what's the payback? How do you take advantage of the institutional memory and the history that we have and make that valuable for the young librarians who are coming to the Charleston Conference for the first time? And I would love to see some way of doing that is something other than, you know, us oldsters telling amusing stories about what it was like when we, you know, walked through the snow for a mile to get to kindergarten.
Yeah.
I think you should sing. You do so well. Can't hear you.
Hello.
I can't talk.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Someone told me on the way over here that I should share this anecdote, and I looked it up, and it proved to be true. And that was they went to revise their entry on LinkedIn before they came to this conference and thought they should, you know, update it because they were speaking here. And the age situation was they were unable to edit everything because the fields don't allow you, if you're born prior to 1950, to update it. So there was age discrimination just blatantly right there, and sort of turned him off from any kind of social media experience because he was sort of proud of the fact that he could say he was older than that and still, you know, active in whatever he was trying to do. But it was kind of interesting. And so he says, you know, ageism is pretty blatant. We have to be careful about it. But I'd like to solicit input. So, Derek, please start.
Thank you, if I may. Like all of the elderly, I will rabbit on for a minute or two, if I may, with one comment and one question. One being a response to what Scott was saying just now about the rate for retirees. I remember very vividly when I started my professional career over 50 years ago, I had a very great organization which sent us to all sorts of conferences to learn and to train and what have you. Our bosses at work were always too busy. They were doing too many things on too many committees to actually help us. But the things we learned at conferences from the elder statesmen at conferences, the kind of unofficial mentoring that went on there, hugely influenced me in my career. And I think that's perhaps the answer to the question, whether formally or informally, the way that one can contribute, not to knowledge about AI, but to knowledge about how to conduct your business, as it were.
Yeah, but those are the conversations that happen in the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You say that like it's a bad thing.
No,
Yeah.
no. That's I've learned more in the bar, and exactly as you say, talking to that generation before me.
Yeah.
So not just talking to your peer group, but talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other is kind of a comment and a question. I agreed absolutely with most of the things you're saying about responding to the community and so on. I have one darker thing which keeps me going, and I wondered if this was just me or whether it's shared with others. I have a successful daughter who's kind of following in my footsteps, except she's a medical doctor, medical consultant. She's beginning to sit on national committees. She's beginning to go to conferences and international conferences, beginning to get things published and so on. And she keeps saying that she's succeeding me, and I'm saying, you won't succeed me until you've published as many papers as I have. And you won't succeed like me until you have as many post-nominal letters after your name as I do. And it becomes almost competitive with my daughter, which I think is not really fair. But I wondered if anybody else had entirely selfish reasons as well as contributing to the community.
Well, I have a local situation. My son helps me come here because I use Delta e-miles, air miles, sorry. So I get here and I get here. Nice Katina gives me a free room. I shouldn't probably say that in case other people want a free room, but I get a free room because of long service, and that's marvelous. But I say one side thing has happened. When I got back last night, I thought I'd go into the bar. There was nobody in the bar at all.
Yeah.
And there was the man behind the bar who looked incredibly bored. He was bored. He was rubbing glasses, you know, in the way they do, and they're really bored. And he told me nobody had been in for quite a long time. And I was shocked. I thought you'd been there. And I thought Lavender would be in there. Yeah. They weren't there. It's disgusting. It used to be what a marvelous place to meet after the horrors of the day, and you know, all the things we hadn't done, and after we'd been taken out for some frightful meal in one of the few indecent restaurants in Charleston, the poor ones. They're not many. It's quite difficult to find them. You just come back to the Francis Marion and enjoy a drink with a friendly person who'd be there.
I know what you mean, and I think it's because we all go to bed early now. I don't know.
It's sad.
It is.
Maybe everybody's just being wholesome. As a person of no particular professional attainment, I have a question and an observation. One is on the question side, because I'm about 2 years out from retiring.
That's young.
Does it make a difference, do you find in your observations, if not your experience, where retirees are who are sort of in the status hierarchy of the profession? We're all used to being second-class citizens in our universities. You know, I feel that all the time, notwithstanding a middle-tier Ivy League PhD. But I think there is the question, you know, of the sense of what can we give back. There is that sense of, well, how much is the voice from the top? How much is, I'll mix the metaphor, the voice from the front lines? I've always been in public services, and that may have a sense of who might want to come back as a retiree. Related to that, and this is the observation side, is a good friend of mine does science and technology studies. I happen to be his librarian. And his name's Lee Vinsel. He wrote an interesting popular book a couple years ago called The Innovator's Delusion, or Innovation Delusion. And he has been an advocate for what he calls the maintainers, the people who actually make the innovative stuff work over time. And having heard a lot of talk about the wonderland of innovation today, I think one of the cases for people who are retired and have some of the perspectives on innovations that didn't work may have a standing role of a contribution to the conference to say, okay, AI will fix a lot of things, but we still have to do a bunch of retrospective cataloging. We still have to count stuff on the shelves. We still have to do instruction. And those are things that a lot of these new affordances create new overhead, and the new people who are coming in who are skilled in doing those things still have to do a lot of grunt work that the vendors somehow didn't tell us they'd have to do.
Yeah, I like that comment a lot, and I think when you talk about, you know, whatever the social hierarchy is, I became prominent in the profession because I talk a good game.
Very true.
So I could be relied on to give an entertaining presentation. I could be relied on to write well. Does that mean that my actual ideas and experience were better and stronger than, as you say, the maintainers, the people who are actually making things happen? I don't necessarily think so. So I like the notion of, if we're going to look at the value that retirees bring, that how do we find mechanisms and forums for those frontline people to share their experiences and their real life work that can get lost when people are talking at the lofty level of innovation and idea and, you know, break things and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So I think if we were to try to actually do something with retirees, keeping that in mind would be really important.
So my name's Rhea Vakos, and I've got a comment, and then I'm here for a selfish reason, like many of you are, or have you?
I can't quite hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I can hear me now. So my name's Rhea Vakos, and like many of you, I'm here for a selfish reason. But I'll start with a comment that I've organized smaller conferences where we've given free registration to students in exchange for some work. And when you all were talking, I was wondering what needs doing at this conference. And one of the things I was thinking about was the terror that your first presentation involves, right? So now with technology, retirees may not be up on the latest on AI or transformative agreements, but they've certainly done, many of them have done many presentations and have listened to many presentations. So being able to rehearse those now over Zoom or even in person would really assist, or even assisting people with their submissions would change the nature, may change the nature of the submissions and broaden the pool and so on, reviewing posters. There's probably lots of things that people can do, but I think that's one of the ways one can give back.
I had just as much terror in the last 2 hours before this panel as I've had 10 years ago doing a presentation in front of 1,000 people. So it's you don't figure out how to make the terror go away, but you do figure out how to keep working through it. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your question.
I was going to move on to my selfishness now. So, and it'll be brief, I promise. So I haven't decided if I'm a year or 8 years away from retirement, but I'm on sabbatical this year, and I am looking at how to increase the satisfaction of late career librarians. I'm calling it plus or minus 1,000 days, which is 3 to 5 years. There's not a lot of literature on this, and the literature is in passing negative, right? How can the millenniums supervise us? And how can they get us to change? And so I'm interested in looking at this as a distinct part of our career, and as a pleasurable and productive part of our career. So I've got a few things and ideas, but I'd love to chat with any of you who are interested, who could act as a sounding board for me. I'm happy to buy you a drink in exchange. Some of you probably require more than one drink, and I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Can I make a comment to that? I think that I love your idea about presentation coaching. That doesn't, yeah, I mean, that would be lovely. And the other thing is, you know, when I did my phased retirement, I was asked to go do a responsibility that I'd never done before, and I had to learn some new things. And I think that that's the key to keeping yourself engaged in retirement, is how to learn new things, even when you're not, you know, working in a hugely responsible job necessarily. So I really support that model, and hope that other places can find ways to keep their long time employees engaged.
Hello. I have benefited from all three of you, from your teachings and learnings, and I had the honor to work for Scott for a few years, and I also learned from his wife, Lynn. So I just want to say thank you. I'm so sad there's not more people in this room, because you've definitely, there are so many people who have benefited from your speaking at Charleston, your publishing. I remember the first time I met you, Anthony. It was on Halloween, and we were walking down the street, and one of the students thought you were in a Fidel Castro costume. And
I can't remember that.
you still have kept your beard.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, I hope Charleston's on Halloween.
I missed Halloween this year. I didn't have the opportunity of opening a door in Ann Arbor, and a lot of small children stagger back seeing me.
But I just want to say that from my heart, how much I've benefited. I am a better librarian because of all of you. And
Thank
so
you.
I just wanted to say that. That's why I'm here.
Oh,
Just
sweet.
one really quick thing. So I'm going to be 50 next year, and I work for a medical school, and this is the first time they've approached people who are like 50 and above to have a retirement date. And it scares the hell out of me. I'm like, and so when I had to meet with the consultant, I was like, and this was a few months ago, I was like, okay, when's the earliest I can retire? And they're like, this date. And they have like set up my portfolio and my whole life. And I know what I'm gonna do for the next 14 years. And I love what some of the things you said, because so many of my coworkers who are in their 50s, they're like, they want to get rid of us. We're expensive. You know, we don't do as much, or we do too much, or we don't want to do this anymore. And I have to say, for like a month, I really had a depression. I had a steep sadness. I love what I do, but I'm not ready to leave. But yet, in academia, we are deemed expensive. There's nothing positive about being an older academic anymore. And that's just really sad in the state that we live in.